Well, I'm going to take a contrarian position on Afghanistan, I think, from the mainstream media, and maybe not from you. Maybe you guys are all who watch our show or maybe on the same page on this, people who aren't brainwashed by the mainstream media, who aren't being spoon-fed. Four-star general this, five-star general this. Everyone's out of the woodwork saying what a disaster Afghanistan has been. Why couldn't we have waited a few more months, et cetera, et cetera. So President Biden gave a speech last night. And I don't know how many of you watched it. I did because I thought it was an important moment in his presidency. And what he said really struck me. I couldn't, at the end of it. And look, I am no, me, I'm no President Biden apologist at all. I call him out on endless mistakes. But last night I thought his speech on Afghanistan was spot on and showed some pretty strong courage on his part to basically say, hey, I'm not going to let this go to any other president. I'm taking responsibility for it. It was never going to be clean. It was never going to be easy, but I'm done. I'm not going to hand this off to anybody else anymore. So on its surface, I will give him credit for that. Let's listen to the president's speech here, and I'm going to parse it a little bit.
Decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I will be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated.
So just right that little moment, right? Did you ever hear President Trump apologize or say, hey, you know what, we analyzed it and our analyzation of this was inaccurate?
No, because that's considered weak. Presidents don't apologize.
Right. Should we all learn from Jack Kennedy, JFK, who after the Bay of Pigs invasion, he was carried out on his watch. It was a huge disaster. He had listened to his generals in the military-industrial complex talk him into doing it, okay? And he did it, and it was a disaster. He was a new president at the time when he did it. And it was a failure. He came out at the podium, and his father said, it's like, you know what? Americans will forgive you if you apologize. So he did. He said, you know what? This happened on my watch. It was my call. He didn't pass the buck to somebody else and said, I just listened to I listened to John. It was John's fault. He said, I take credit for this. It was my mistake. It'll never happen again. Jack Kennedy. Guess what? His approval rating went up after that, after the Bay of Pigs invasion. So he says here, look, we didn't think that it was going to happen this quickly. But basically saying what everyone else knew is that it was going to happen. Every analyst knew that this was going to happen. And the mainstream media somehow spinning this as if they don't know that this was going to happen. This is odd that this is unfolded this way. Like Axios. It's stunning failure for the West and an embarrassment for Biden. Is it really? Is it really Axios? And it's traumatic turn for veterans. Yeah, maybe that part's right. It's who sacrificed in Afghanistan over the past 20 years. Yeah, why were they there for 20 years? And the 20,000 plus wounded in action, and survivors of the more than 2.3 thousand who were killed. It's a stunning failure for the West. No, the moment we went into Afghanistan was a stunning failure for the West. And it's not an embarrassment for Biden. It's an embarrassment for the mainstream media who want you to think that it's an embarrassment for Biden. But frankly, I applaud him. I absolutely think what he did and stood up last night and didn't backtrack, didn't look weak, said, nope, we give them an opportunity. We trained them for 20 years. We spent $2 trillion. Oh, and by the way, the mainstream media continues to lie about how much money we spent in Afghanistan. I've seen article after article saying we spent $1 trillion in Afghanistan. Total horseshit. We spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan to prop up a nation that shouldn't have been a nation in the first place. Countless suicides and death and soldiers. I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of them over the years when I worked at Fox News. Hundreds. and we prop them up as, heroes, and yes, they are. And they'd come out and this person lost his leg. This person, this wife lost her husband in Afghanistan, and she set up this fund to make sure that children can go to college. The lost, of parents who died in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's like, for what?
Well, and let's not forget the children and innocent mothers and uncles and brothers and stuff that we've killed over there that lost their lives just for living in their own country.
No, you can't say that, though. That's the thing, right? Like, you and I could say it here on this show, but it's if you go on, like, if you're going like mainstream media and say, it's enough to like talk about our soldiers, right, on a mainstream American media and say, like, how many Americans have been killed, right? And that's how Axios frames this. Like, look at Axios framing this, right? They say 20 years, 20,000 wounded in action, survivors of the 2,000 who were killed. That doesn't mention at all the thousands of Afghani children and women who were killed as a result of our drone strikes and airstrikes over the years.
Well, and how hypocritical, too, because they sure don't treat those people like heroes. They got to fight for anything they need. They got to fight for medical care. They got to fight for... if they got PTSD, they got to fight for their lives harder when they get back here than when they were over there.
Exactly.
But they can sure, call them heroes on the media and call them heroes all over, but they sure don't treat them that way.
And you have, businesses that are, try to hire veterans only, or they really have like a veterans program. They're really trying, like Starbucks, I think, really trying to help and hire veterans. It's like, because the skills don't translate necessarily. That's the sad part, right? They're using like drone technology to bomb villages. Like that technology those skills don't necessarily translate to phone sales.
So I thought, what about the
happened?
6,000 troops that they were sending back?
Well, so he gets to that. And of course, those 6,000 are basically there to just escort people out of the airport. And he says in the speech last night that if any of these people are attacked or hurt while this transition is happening and we're getting our personnel and others out of there, then we will attack you back. So, there you go, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to go back into war now. Is this the end point? Like, we'll stand here like human shields. You fire upon us, guess what? We start all over again.
Well, and that's another thing that doesn't make sense is why would they send back way more than they had there in the first place? If they would have just kept the people there that were there, helped the people out first, do the evacuation first, and then leave, couldn't that have been avoided? But now they're sending more back. I don't know.
And to me, like, no. Like, no. Like, I will say, get the hell out of there. Like, this timetable was there. We knew about it. And he admits, like, hey, wow, this sort of collapse happened a lot quicker than we thought because guess what? There's 300,000 troops that we trained for 20 years. And guess what? The government of Kabul, the government of Afghanistan, the president of the company literally fled the country and left. So this happened more quickly than we anticipated. And the question you asked, and I'm not picking on you for this question, but it's the same question that Jake Tapper asked Andrew Blinken the other day, as if we should just keep people there indefinitely. We should just sort of, and I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying like, we should just keep all these people there. We had to get out. It was part of our peace agreement with them. This was the date. We had a peace agreement. They were to leave and get out. That's when we were supposed to leave. And if we didn't, we were violating our peace agreement with the Taliban. And then guess what? Guns blazing all over again. Do you think the Taliban was going to like just say, oh, you guys can just have a few more days? Like, just go ahead. Like, we're coming. Like, we're taking over. And we have 300,000 people that we trained for $2 trillion. Get out. Time to leave. Time to leave.
Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country.
Good. I mean, he's saying it. We gave you an opportunity. Like, we gave you everything. We gave you the best equipment. We gave you an Air Force. We gave you an Air Force for crying out loud. You left.
The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
I think that sums it up, right? So wait a minute. Mainstream media, neocons, warmongers, you want our sons and daughters to fight a war in a country that their own troops won't even support and want to fight? I mean, we had Hessian for, you had French that were able to help us during the Revolutionary War, but the amount of sacrifice that we had in our own American Revolution, right? It's not like Lafayette came into America and the French were helping us with ships, but we were like sitting back smoking cigarettes like, oh, you French, you want us to be free? Oh, fine, then you fight our war for us. I'm just going to sit here in Philadelphia and hang out by the fire. No. We had people that like literally didn't have boots at Valley Forge and had their feet frozen, frostbitten, sleeping on a frozen field in Valley Forge. And we fought, for our own freedom. We fought against the British and the Hessians for our own freedom. So they laid down their weapons and an amnesty program basically with the Taliban. Here, take all of the weapons that the United States just provided us. These brand new shiny guns, this brand new Air Force, these helicopters, these Humvees, these tanks that the American taxpayer paid for.
See, doesn't that just seem like, to me, when I look at that, I think, what kind of person, like it's like base level tactics to know that what they should have done is destroyed that stuff, then helped the people, and then got out, right? It's like they left that stuff there intentionally because they knew they would take it over, and then now they've got their propaganda campaign for the next time where they can be like, hey, look, they stole all of our stuff and they're using it against us, and we're going to send 6,000 troops back there, and they're going to have a confrontation. Mark my words, that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be with our own stuff. It's like somebody at the base level had to know that, like, there's these generals, that's what they do. They strategize. They shouldn't have known that those people were going to take that stuff over, so that stuff should have been destroyed. Makes no sense.
I mean, everyone knew this was going to happen. Everyone knew this was going to happen. I mean, if you didn't know this was going to happen, you were lying. Here's Code Pink. The U.S. war in Afghanistan wasn't pointless. It enriched precisely who it was meant to. Companies that profit from war get richer as the world burns. Don't forget this as politicians and weapons lobbyists try to justify the next war for humanitarian concerns. Look at this. Lockheed Martin profits. Look at that. 20 years war. How well have they done since then? Thanks, Lockheed Martin. Thanks, Lockheed Martin, for all of your service. I love this. Richard Ojeda, retired U.S. Army major. You don't hear a lot of this. $2 trillion to train and equip the Afghan military over the past 20 years. They fell in a week. It was never about real training. It was about military contractors and corporations raking in giant profits. I am numb. I am sure everyone else who spent years there feels the same. And I love this. George Axios again. Here we go. George W. Bush said tonight that he and Laura Bush have been watching the tragic events unfolding in Afghanistan with deep sadness. Yeah. Deep sadness, right?
Yeah, just work on your paintings, dude.
Yes. I love this. I got the U.S. into an unwinnable war, 20-year war, and now you morons are arguing whether it's Trump's fault or Biden's fault. Right? I mean, isn't that the truth? I'm saddened. Laura and I are sitting here watching the telly, and we're just saddened by this. I without a hint of irony about it, our hearts are heavy for both the Afghan people who have suffered so much and the Americans and the NATO allies. Deep sadness that the Taliban has taken over. But hey, Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, thank you, George W., because they are billions and billions of dollars richer thanks to you. Thanks to you, war criminal.
Well, and did you ever see that thing like where, what was that, Halliburton during Iraq, where they were saying how they were charging the United States like $30 for a Pepsi. The laundry was like $150 per bag or something like that for soldiers to get done. Like what they were charging the U.S. for the services that they did were completely outrageous, and we're just footing that bill. Like we're paying for that stuff.
Exactly. Oh yeah, it's amazing. Like, wait a minute. So you're charging us just to get the laundry done for these troops 100 times the amount that it would cost to normally get it done? How are you patriotic? Oh, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how this company is unpatriotic for like it's wartime. It's wartime. What about sugar rations and gasoline rations, right? We were attacked by the Nazis, so we all have to pitch in, right? Rosie the Riveter. We have to all pitch in. We have to do our duty. No, that's gone. Now it's all the profiteers of the war companies. Be busy. The 45th president was talking about withdrawing troops from Afghanistan before he was even president back in 2012. Dean Thomas. Bush was pissed he didn't get his cut. Oh, he got more than his cut. I mean, make no mistake about it.
He's lucky he's not in prison for war crimes.
Asia says, Cheney, he might be another can of sodium. Laundry does cost a lot of water, Itzderka says. Yeah. I mean, and the American people, so where do the American people come down on this, right? The American people overwhelmingly support getting out of Afghanistan. Overwhelming Americans wanted the removal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. Let me know in the chat right now, how many people watching, I want you to type in the word stay or go. Do you want us to go out of Afghanistan, or do you want us to stay in Afghanistan?
Should we stay or should we go now?
Look at this. I love this. All of these different polls. But my favorite, though, was the Axios reporter who tweeted this out and who said, I think it was Axios. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. I think said, look at these polls. This is pretty amazing. Overwhelming support for getting out of Afghanistan. But look at the Politico Morning Consult poll. It's tightening up. It's tightening up. And the reporter said, we're going to keep our eye on this poll because it might suddenly these polls might switch and the American people might want to stay in Afghanistan. Yeah. What American wants us to stay in Afghanistan? Just curious.
I put a poll up, so I'm waiting to see what the poll shows.
Yeah. Super chat. Thank you for that question, Amy. When in American history was it decided that we would be the helpers of all other countries, and who decided it? History lesson, Clayton? Oh, the military-industrial complex. I mean, the moment that we ended World War II, we should have dissolved our standing military and gone back to peacetime. We never had a massive standing military in U.S. history. And so when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, we hardly had a navy. I mean, we had like decrepit old ships. We had a few ships. We didn't need it. What do we need it for? Guess what? In a few short months, we were able to ramp up and build a massive navy and military. New Orleans, we launched the Higgins boats, right? The Higgins factory in New Orleans built the landing craft that landed on the beaches of Normandy. The Higgins boats, right? They were like, that was private industry. It was like, boom, like that. Thousands of them. We were able to mobilize quickly and win a war against two imperial powers at two different fronts in the Pacific and in Europe. So don't tell me we need a massive standing army that's just there and literally is costs this much, and our debt for us to go in this much into debt so we can have this massive standing army.
So in the poll, 269 votes, 7% stay, 93% say go.
Wow. So 7% of you say we need to stay. Interesting. Kind of surprised by that. Maybe you guys just hit the wrong button. I mean, for a country that doesn't even want us there, and by the way, is not even meant to be a country, a group of tribes that shouldn't even have a line that's drawn the way that it's drawn.
That song actually makes sense. Should we stay or should we go? Like, if we leave, there will be trouble. If we stay, it will be double. Like, Like we have to know that like there are going to be issues with us pulling out, but we can't like, no matter when we would do it, that's what happens. And we would have to stay there, forever and do what? We've done nothing there. We've done nothing to help those people. Like we're basically an occupying force.
And as Richard Ojeda says, I mean, it was never about real training. It was about military contractors and corporations making huge profits. That's it. That's all it was. And if you think otherwise, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself. To recap, we spent over $2 trillion on an unwinnable war in a country that fell the instant we left, but we can't afford to protect Americans from death by giving them affordable health care. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Nothing makes sense.
Exactly, Judge. Exactly. But you'll still, just to be clear, the mainstream media, you guys will prop all of this up, and you will continue to say how we should never have left. We should just give them a few more months, a few more years, and we've got to stay and make sure that everything is stable, and on and on.
So 380 votes, 8% say stay, 92% say go.
There you go.
In the poll.
Yeah. I'm going to say I think it was courageous of President Biden to do this. I think that by him saying, I'm not going to pass this on to another president, I'm done. Now, if he can just do that for all of the other wars that we're in, like, let's give that the same attention. Let's have him be the president. And he's like, look, I will take the responsibility for it. I know I'm going to be criticized for this, and I will take it because I'm not going to hand this off to another president. I'll take it. Give it to me. I'm 82 years old, and he didn't say this. He was like, I don't have many more years on this earth. I will take this. I will let this be. If this is going to be a stain somehow that I'm going to save people's lives, not getting killed in a country that we shouldn't be in, fine. I'll take it. You know what? It's hard to do the unpopular thing. And he did it. And I don't know, though it's really popular with the American people. It's just unpopular in the mainstream media. Isn't it amazing that the American people want us out of there, and yet the mainstream media is calling it a chaos and disaster? And it's how did Axios put it? It's an embarrassment for Biden.
Look, I'm glad this is happening as well, but I want to know, why is this the hill he chose to die on and not helping the people at the beginning with all the initial campaign promises he made for the $2,000 checks and to help the people? Like, why would you? I understand that the American people want us out of there, but why would that be the hill you would choose and say, I'm a straight shooter? Like I said, I'm going to be a straight shooter with the United States people, but he hasn't been a straight shooter. And this is the first campaign promise that he manages. Well, not first, but one of the few that he's managed to actually do. Like, I wonder why that was the one he chose to die on.
Like Kristen says, why won't Biden use the same cojones for stimulus?
Exactly.
It is an interesting question. It's a great question because, this is him going up against the military-industrial complex, right? And but maybe not, because I want to see in a year, like, how much money we're still spending in Afghanistan on air support strikes, drone strikes.
Well,
that sort of thing.
I feel like we're going to see it sooner than later, because when they get those 6,000 troops back over there and we've got the Taliban with our weapons, I just feel like it's going to happen right then. Like, I feel like something's going to happen. They're going to be like, oh, they got our weapons. We're going to have to stay here. That's what I see. To me,
you're so cynical.
I know.
I mean, you got to trust your government, right? I mean, they always tell us the truth.
Right.
We spent over $1 trillion.
$2 trillion.
Trained and equipped an Afghan military force of some 300,000 strong, incredibly well equipped, a force larger in size than the militaries of many of our NATO allies. We gave them every tool they could need. We paid their salaries, provided for the maintenance of their Air Force, something the Taliban doesn't have. Taliban does not have an Air Force.
They do now.
We provided close air support. We gave them every chance to determine their own future. What we could not provide them was the will to fight for that future.
So we're just going to stay there forever? Anyway, let me know in the chat your thoughts on this. But I think it's interesting too. When you look at like how much we spend on this, for instance, this is the Arizona Boneyard. These are all, the amount of money we spend on our Pentagon spending over the years. We build all of these aircraft and machines that we don't use, and they sit there basically collecting dust. This is the Arizona Boneyard. These are all military jets and equipment that just sit there unused that we just build and crank them out, and we don't use them. Collecting dust. So maybe it's better we give them to the Taliban. At least they'll maybe use them. Start funneling that money out there. Giving it to those people. But always remember, I got the U.S. into an unwinnable 20-year war. And now you morons are arguing whether it's Trump's fault or Biden's fault. Don't forget me. I'm right over here. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.